Hi, every. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Uh, let me.
Got a technical. Ah, there we are.
Hello.
There we go. Hello, everybody. This is a conversation with Claire Wilding on Warrior TV, Mental Health Warrior TV, and we're honored to have Claire Wilding, who's the Reboot Catalyst, and has an interesting history. She's suffered from anxiety, depression, and cPTSD, and now she's a coach and a teacher of people who want to break out of anxiety. And she has a 4-step program called the 4 R's, which are reassess your present reality, refocus, regenerate, and have results focused upon life changing actions. Um, and I'm Dale Walsh, the Poetic Warrior, and this we're joined by Simon McDougall, the Workplace Warrior, and hopefully we're going to get to the bottom of what Claire does, and you can get in touch. We'll give you the way to get in touch with her too. So welcome, Claire. Welcome, Simon. How's
Thank you
everybody
so much.
today?
Hello.
Hello. Doing okay. Doing okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
Not too
no,
bad.
doing
How are
well.
you?
So, why don't we just start from the beginning, Claire, and how you got in? Well, you give us. Why don't you give us a brief bio about your struggles with mental illness or mental health, and how you got to the place where you are now?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It would be an honour. So around 3 years ago, I left a toxic relationship. I was burning myself out constantly with everything I was trying to do. I was a bit of a workaholic, to be honest. I was doing absolutely everything that was completely wrong for myself. And as you were saying before, Dale, I struggled off the back of those circumstances, leaving those horrific situations with depression, anxiety, and cPTSD. Now, of course, at the time, I knew very, very little about cPTSD and all the ramifications it can actually cause. But it was definitely a journey. It was an incredibly difficult time in my life, and I found myself reaching what I can only describe as rock bottom. You know, you've lost your will, you've lost your desire for life, you've lost absolutely every kind of sense of who you are and what you stand for. And following on from that experience, of course, it took a long period of recovery for me to be able to get myself and my day to day and my entire mentality back to a state where I was able to just cope. So it was horrific, and I've written a little bit about it as well. So please forgive me for reading from some prompts. But I could only describe it as once being in the darkest headspace I could ever have imagined. It was very dark. It was very difficult, very lonely as well. It was a very lonely point in my life. And the worst part, of course, is it was inside my head, so I couldn't escape it. It was definitely my head that was in the most challenging state. It was constant reminders of trauma I'd endured, hypervigilance, so constantly questioning everything around me, constantly like having very little trust, if any, in other people. And there genuinely seemed to be no way out in sight. And of course, what I didn't know was that it came from a lot of unprocessed trauma. It came from things that I hadn't addressed in the past. I'd always kind of shunned to one side and said, oh, you know, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. Don't look into that. Don't go there. And of course, eventually it got to a point where someone essentially ripped off the Band-Aid and I had to. So that was ultimately what I was facing. Now, what this meant for me at one particular point was I couldn't sleep. I couldn't switch my brain off. It was constantly going, here's a trauma, here's a trauma, here's a trauma, you know, and reminding me, it was like flashbacks all the time. I didn't have any desire to eat. I'd completely lost my appetite. I had no energy, of course, as a result of both of these, but I was still trying, as I once did, to continue with my normal routine. And I volunteered quite a lot. I was very involved in the community. I was involved in sports and so many other things that you think, wow, that's a really rounded person's life, you know. But of course, I was actually beginning to realize that I was doing those things to distract myself and to, you know, to have something else to focus on. Because of course, when you're dealing with a lot of hurt and a lot of pain, the last thing you want is to have to think about it, isn't it? So it actually took, for me, and I'm very grateful for this, a very supportive mum and a very supportive friend at the darkest point in my life, who, you know, was always there should I need to call someone up and say, I just need some company. You know, there was always someone who was like, you know, this isn't you, you can get through this, you know, keep going, keep going, keep going. It is going to get easier. But obviously what my brain was doing was processing all of those things and trying to make sense of it. So if you can imagine being super analytical, that was what my brain was doing. My brain was analyzing every single detail. Why did this happen? Why did that happen? What's caused this? What's caused that? And I just couldn't stop. It was always there. So eventually I got myself to a point of, I took myself to the doctor and I said, I can't cope with this anymore. You know, I'm at the point of being suicidal. I was pacing up and down the seafront just to try and put one foot in front of the other and say, this is not me. This is not going to stop. You know, this is not part and parcel of who I am. Just keep going. And I had to physically pound my feet into the pavement and say, just keep going, because it is going to get easier. So I got myself put on citalopram, and I had had a beta blocker as well. So at that particular point, that they were essential, absolutely essential. And the funny part was, I went from not being able to sleep and eat at all to suddenly I was constantly sleeping. My mind had switched off. I was completely exhausted. And eventually when those tablets began to settle, it was a real strange experience for me, because I went from feeling everything to feeling nothing all of a sudden. So I became quite objective. I became, you know, at some point, my nearest and dearest was saying I was quite cold and I wasn't very accommodating to other people's emotions. But I think my brain did that to switch off. And I'm very grateful that it did, because now I can look at things very differently. And I can say, you know, now it's all settled down, that a lot of what you worry about normally isn't worth stressing about. You know, it becomes all about your inner self. It becomes all about the love and compassion that you're having for yourself, and saying, do you know what? A lot of these stresses are not worth worrying about. And it's a very, very healthy headspace to be in. And I'm so grateful, you know, so grateful. But obviously, before I waffle on much longer, I'd love you to join in.
You brought up some good points. You define what cPTSD is, which I'm not sure. I mean, most people know about PTSD, but they don't know
Yeah,
what cPTSD is, and so. But I just had like a few reactions. One was analysis leads to paralysis, and that seems to be what happened when you were at your worst. And the second one was, I think it's Mark Twain that said, 90% of the things I worry about don't happen. So
absolutely.
that's where your brain just like takes over and says, worry about this, worry about this, and most of our worries are in the future. And I
Yeah.
get that's basically what you address in your program. But uh, so one thing I did want to ask you about is you said someone ripped off the band-aid. Who was that person that ripped off the band-aid? Was it your best friend, or was it someone else, or
I think it was a culmination of factors, actually, because at that particular point in my life, I began to realize a lot of relationships were falling away. And obviously, at the time, very painful, very, very painful. Um, for example, I lost my uncle around 3 or 4 years ago now to lung and esophagus cancer. Now, my uncle to me was like a beacon. He was a guiding light. He was a very optimistic person, very warm. And to me, he was a very important figure in my life. So, of course, that was very painful. And off the back of that, I began to realize a lot of me having to deal with my own pains and my own um, ways of coping with them meant that I wasn't there for a lot of people. I wasn't there for, my best friend. We had a falling out and we don't speak anymore and all of this. And it was very, very difficult for a long time. But I also see the value in that now. I see that, when you go through an incredibly painful, incredibly difficult chapter of your life, you are asked to draw on your own strength. And until you've actually made it through that patch, that is where you have to go, because other people aren't going to do that for you. Other people might be there to offer advice, they might be there to offer some guidance, but it's you that has to do the hard work. So I basically went into myself. I said, for goodness sake, these are very difficult things and I have to just let it hurt, let it heal, and move forward from that point. And of course, you do learn a lot about yourself. You do realize that once things like that have happened, there is nothing that you can't really handle. And I've certainly believed that about myself ever since, because I've said to myself, I've been at my darkest place. I've dealt with it, you know, very, very suddenly and very, very intensively. And I've dealt with a lot of these things happening in my life alongside it. So if I've been through that, there is absolutely nothing that I can't cope with, and that was the strength that it gave me. And it helped me to move forward.
well, I don't want to monopolize the conversation, Simon. Or is there something you'd like to ask or bring up or something, or?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, a lot of what Claire has said could describe me, to be quite honest, because I recognise that pattern of going down the spiral and getting towards rock bottom where you can't go any further. I recognise the issues around, paralysis analysis, as you've said there, Dale. But, you know, to me, it was and always was a never-ending cycle with the brain going round and round and round.
Absolutely.
And it was, laying in bed at night, I recognised too that there with all the gibberish and everything else that just constantly going around in your head and that. And then, as you say, when drugs are kicked in and they starting to do their job, you just become mentally and physically exhausted, and all you want to do is sleep. And I've been there through that process many times over the years with anxiety and depression, and I recognise that journey very well. But I think I've come out every time I've done it. I, like you, have come out a stronger person. The last time I was in a difficult place was when I was 50, and finally the penny dropped. Fortunately for Claire, it sounds like it's managed to drop first time round. And for me, the penny that dropped was always around the fact that you're in control of your thoughts.
Yeah.
And if you do start to take control of your thoughts, then you are in control of any situation, because once you do that, you recognize the fact that, yes, actually, I can choose what I'm going to do with this situation.
Yeah.
You take a step back, you analyze it, and then you choose the reaction that you want to take to any given moment. And the one thing I would say to viewers is that process that Claire has described, it is the worst stage, but it's also the most important stage. You've got to learn to be vulnerable and let it hurt.
Yeah.
And that hurting will stop. And, and it's all part of the process. And once you allow it to hurt, you let it in, then you can then you can start the journey on the way out. But it's always, and it's absolutely important that you do have supportive family, friends, or whoever around you that can support and help you get back on your feet.
I completely agree with that. Completely agree, Simon. And thank you for reflecting that back as well, because it's also a very important moment for you to realise who the right influences are in your life as well. And I began to reanalyze relationships I had in my life and realize where I should let them go and where I should kind of go, well, I've outgrown that now, or that's not really reflecting the person I am or the person I'm becoming anymore. So I don't think it's worth holding on to things, and you begin to say, what do I need for my life? What do I want for the people that I surround myself with? What do I need to be able to flourish and actually be the best version of myself? And it's really important to ask yourself those questions, because if you really think about it, the people that you're surrounded by do have a massive bearing on your own inner monologue, and like you were saying, it's important to have that part of yourself that has said, this is what I want. But at the same time, the people that you have around you help feed into that. They do. So ultimately, what I found myself doing past my most dark point was surrounding myself with people who would build me up and who would say, do you know what? You're doing fantastically. You're really brave. You're really strong. The things that you're putting out there, certainly in terms of the content that I've produced, are inspiring. And I thought, wow, this has just come from me telling my story and actually validating my own experiences. They are the people that you need to be able to say, yes, I want more of that for myself, because I want more of the people that recognize these things. Oh, sorry, phone's beeping. But that's another thing you have to do, because of course you have the strength inside of you. You've built your own internal walls up. And I actually describe it being my mental fort. You have to choose who you let into your mental fort, and if they are going to have the right influence. If you always have people that are complacent about things or dismissive about things, they're not going to help you. They're going to become almost a negative.
Yeah.
it's things like that. You really have to consider them. And I found that to be very empowering, you know. So now my Facebook wall, for instance, is full of positivity. I decided that a long time ago. I was like, oh, I can't stand seeing moaning all the time. I can't stand people being so negative about the world all the time. So you actively change that, and it helps to feed into that internal positivity. So yeah, it's another tip for everyone.
Well, one thing that comes to my mind is the, if you feel someone's being negative and not helping and everything, sometimes it doesn't have to be a permanent cutoff. I mean, you can't be, because as you grow, then you can, I mean, say you take off like 6 months from them, and you come back a completely changed person, then that's going to affect them, and it's going to help their negativity. But and if they're still negative and you don't feel they're in your life mix, then you can say, okay, I'm sorry, we have to part ways. Uh but basically it's just like, the the famous formula is you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So
Completely.
so uh, and I've radically changed my peer group and my support system in the last year, and it's really helped me. And uh, you know, I think it's really like been a beneficial effect on me, because I'm around much more successful and like positive people, and and it's hard to be positive when you aren't successful.
I would agree to that. Agree with that to a certain degree, definitely. And of course, in terms of the relationships thing, it's about like kind of judging it as you go, isn't it? Because everyone goes through very difficult patches, and obviously I can empathize with that incredibly more now. But sometimes you just have to drift and then come back and reconnect, and see where things are at in terms of that relationship. And I think that's very important. But yeah, in
Right.
terms of success, I think my personal success has come from having a better relationship with myself, first and foremost. It's about recognizing my strengths, recognizing the quality. And I've always been, an incredibly curious learner. I love to learn about things, and particularly psychology. It fascinates me to no end. I could spend hours and hours and hours researching and, looking into great detail on topics. But at the same time, it's success is how you move forward and how you get to the point where you are able to say, this is what I deem successful. Some people look at it as job titles. Some people say, because I'm now a CEO or something, that is their definition of success. Other people look at it and say, well, actually, because I'm a lot happier person than I was, that to me is successful. And being able to bring that forward and, supporting others and saying it's okay, this is what you can do with it, and being able to offer a structured approach to things is a very important tool that I've found for my own success. So.
Well, I think what you said about just being well, success is internal. It's not external. I mean, you can make all the money in the world and still be totally miserable, or you can be like living from paycheck to paycheck. But if you have the positive attitude, then or you have like a good marriage, or you love your kids or something, then that internal success is really what defines you. But you want anything you want to say, Simon?
Yeah, no, I just look out there on what Claire's saying. It's interesting you call it an internal sport because me dragging myself up from the bottom all formed around my knowledge of sports psychology. I love sport, literally every sport going. And often I would just be use the mindset of what I knew as a champion sports player. And I used to pick myself up in that way. In fact, I've got an ebook that I've written on that and how that helped me in my recovery around mental health. But the other point is definition of success. So many people set a goal and they think that once they've achieved that goal, it's going to change everything. Well,
Yeah.
no, it's not the achieving of the goal that changes everything. It's the journey you take on the way to achieving that goal.
Yeah.
That is what makes you a person. That will give you the achievement that you get there.
I
Now,
completely agree.
where a lot of people tend to struggle is, what do I do next? Which is why whenever you're setting a goal, you want milestones along the way so that you are continuously on that journey of learning. I like Claire. I'm a big learner myself. I mean, I read a lot of personal development and business books, and I've learned a lot. Psychology, exactly the same. I mean, we're both. I've completed my training, but we're both doing corporate mental health at the moment, and that very much gets into psychology. It gets into sports psychology, and it teaches you different ways of using your brain to be able to stay in a good mental health space. I mean, absolutely fascinating course. I'm now qualified to train it, and there'll be a passion there going forward, which is why I've become the workplace warrior, because you are very much, as Dale says, you're the sum total of five people that are very much around you, and you don't realise just how much influence is there. I mean, just to sort of tidy that up, I did withdraw from quite a few relationships that were draining me, and I felt that I was being used, and they weren't respecting me for who I was, because I'm a pretty decent chap. I'm one of these that will help anyone, and people I have taken advantage of me in the past, and I've got another point that I was just coming to there. Yeah, and the other thing that I did, I had a real cold on my Facebook friends. I changed and withdrew from a lot of Facebook groups because of the negativity and everything else around that. And the other thing that I've stopped doing, I don't watch the news anymore.
Oh, I haven't done that for years.
Yeah.
I agree completely, Simon.
Yeah.
It's the best move, isn't it? Because you still find out about things, of course, but you just don't have to watch all the blah that goes around it.
Yeah. I hear it from everybody else. I just don't want the negativity.
Yeah, too right. Me neither. You know, you need, obviously you find out the things that you need to know. Quite often it's all on the internet anyways, or there'll be a flash headline somewhere that you notice. But you don't have to feed into doom and gloom and this is happening in the world and that's going wrong, and it really, really does drain you, like you were saying. And I think that's a really important thing to recognize as well. Don't choose to watch or digest things that are going to make you feel rubbish. So yeah.
Well, I agree about the news, but I want to get into why don't you tell us about your program as the Reboot Catalyst and the 4 Rs, because I don't want to like get into the broadcast and not have you be able to tell us about your program, because it seems to be very transformative and very helpful, and it grows out of your own experience. So why
Thank you.
don't
Yeah, it
you
does.
sing about that for a while?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Dale. So we start first and foremost with the point that you mentioned, which is reassessing your current reality. Key word there being current. Where are you at now? You know, where are you mentally at in yourself? Are you at a point where you're ready for growth? Are you at a point where you're ready for a next step? And you have to look at where you are currently at before you move forward. It's really, really very important. Secondly, we then go into refocusing priorities and personal resources, which is where you begin to go, okay, well, what do I know? And being able to bring that forward and going, okay, well, for example, I might have these skills, I might have this knowledge, I might have this qualification, and being able to say, right, okay, well, we'll look at the resources that we have, we'll look at where I started and start to focus those into things we can use, and I tend to do workshops and talks around this, because you never really value what you actually have until someone points it out to you, do you? They can rack up, you might be like, well, I know this, I know that. Oh, fantastic. Well, suddenly you've got a 20 line of bullet points of the things that you actually know. Fantastic. The third one is then regenerating possibilities into dynamic change. Okay, so the changes that you can do something about, the changes that you can make happen in order to rejuvenate yourself. I do this going into the corporate world. Regenerating those possibilities is looking at the people that you have, is looking at yourself, is looking at the skills and the knowledge and the know-how that you have around you, and being able to make the changes in between to value those moving forward. And results focused game-changing actions. This is where we really go into, right, okay, well, we've said that we're going to achieve this. This is the journey to reaching it, and these are the actions we have to take. Okay, these are the things that are going to drive that forward. And it's about being objective. You can sit there for hours on end and someone talk to you about, oh, well, I'm frustrated because I'm in the wrong job, or I'm frustrated because my relationships aren't very healthy. This is where you take that action and you say to yourself, okay, well, what do I really want? Because it's not this. This is where we take the action to make that happen. And there's always a very slightly different way of being able to put that focus, of course, because it depends on the client, it depends on the person, and it depends on what they want to achieve. But ultimately, it's about breaking it down into those 4 simple steps and making it happen. And that's what I ultimately do with people. So, thank you.
Well, one of the things that comes to my mind is that the ego hates change. So,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you say that you try to work with entrepreneurs who are more open to change and who are
Absolutely.
ready to improvise and everything. But how do you get over that initial? I mean, when you're reassessing your present reality, how do you get over that initial reluctance of the ego to give up control and to really make significant change?
That's a very good question, actually. Ultimately, that person has to be receptive. You can't work with a stone wall, can you? That person has to be open to you actually, bringing over what you want to talk about. And people can be very reluctant, but then if they were too reluctant, they wouldn't be seeking my support in the first place. So
Right.
It's about working with it. Obviously, like we've discussed previously, Dale, in another conversation, we were discussing values. Now, of course, someone's values are very different to what their developmental goals might be. So, for instance, someone's a very family orientated person. Fantastic. That's a wonderful thing to be. However, they might also be burning out in a professional capacity and not having enough time for their family. That's something you can work with. It's something that is transient. You can start to work with routines with that person, for instance, or using part of their schedule to make more time. But you can't, and obviously you don't change ultimately what their value is, which is to spend more time with their family, because that's something that's important to them. Do you see the difference?
Yeah, I do, and I just so you spend 90 days on each of the R's, each of the 4 stages, right? To be able
Yeah.
to like build the habits and to so that people can like slowly acclimatize to change rather than just like going from like introvert to extrovert, within a week, so
Yeah.
how does that time schedule work out? I mean, have people been receptive to it, or
I mean, yeah,
because
they have.
it's a year long, basically, right?
It is, yeah. I mean, when you fully commit and you say to yourself, okay, well, I've done the first month, I've looked at where it is I need to make changes, or we've gone through certain sections of what we've discussed already, and quite often within the first 90 days people will begin to notice that their attitude's changing, or that something within them is opening up. So it's amazing how much progress you can make all in one go. And that's the wonderful thing about coaching, because people don't realize that having these conversations or thinking about things slightly differently, having someone to listen, is where they tend to get the most value. And then before you know it, in 90 days you've formed a new habit. So finding out ultimately the patterns and things that are going to help people to make that shift at the beginning is the most important. Everything else after that starts to become a lot easier. But what I do introduce as well is I have accountability groups for each section. So I have people who are on the same part of the program, and I have people who are going along the same part of the journey, who are then in that group together to be able to encourage each other as much as I'm able to jump in and be like, okay, well, where are you at this week? And that's really helpful. That really helps keep the conversation going. It helps keeping people accountable. It helps keeping people conscious, because it's so easy to become complacent with things, isn't it? So that's something that I do.
It sounds like it's a very cooperative atmosphere rather than you being the expert or the authority and like filtering down your teachings. It seems like much more interactive.
Thank you. Well, I've never liked the dictatorship style, to be honest with you. I've never liked the idea of being someone who's going to tell people, do it exactly as I say, because that's not very receptive to human beings. If you ask me, people are, transient. People are, not fixed entities, are they? And people are always willing to be a bit more part and parcel of a process than they are if you would say to them, right, here you go, crack on, here's your work, get on with it.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the way that I see it. And it's a journey, it's a community. It's not something where we just kind of drop people in and leave them to it. It's something where I'm actually able to keep people on the right track, and also bring in other experts as well. So there are quite often a lot of people in my own community who are willing to come in and do additional talks. And they are people that I almost hand pick to help reinvigorate that inspiration, because they're really, really incredibly inspiring to me. So yeah, I find that helps.
Simon?
Yeah, I'd just like to pick up, some of the stuff you're saying. 2 or 3 things that have come to me was, Jim Rowan. For things to change, you have to change.
Yes.
Then you go to Gandhi. You have to become the change that you want to see.
Absolutely.
And the third, and the third thing that comes up there is which all 3 of us have got in common, and you hit the nail on the head earlier, was storytelling.
Yeah.
Everybody has got a story to tell. And yourself, Claire, myself, and Dale, we're all telling our story and our mental health journeys in slightly different ways. And, mental illness doesn't define you, because all conditions are slightly more complex than others. Some people, there's so many forms of anxiety, for argument's sake, or PTSD, and and there's even different levels of depression, and no one's experience is exactly the same. There's a lot of commonality, but there isn't there. We will tackle it in different ways, and I think it's that education that we are giving now as a group here as mental health warriors that hopefully in the long term is allowing people to learn from our experiences and perhaps pick up 1 or 2 tips on the way. And I think the other point there, all 3 of us are coaches.
Yeah.
Now, I think it is the most underrated skill out there. For me, traditional therapy is too prescriptive.
Mm-hmm.
They've got too many techniques, whereas with coaching, you've got 2 of these, 1 of these.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
The skill of coaching is very much a case of asking the questions, letting that person come to their own conclusions and start to design their life forward. And I think what you got there with the 4 R's is an absolute brilliant system to get somebody to come up with their own decisions and find their own direction in life. I think you've done very well with what you've done there.
Thank you, Simon. And I do completely agree with everything that you've just said as well. And I've certainly made the observation as well that the difference between counselling and coaching is that counselling focuses on the struggle. It focuses on the bits that need to be talked about when they need to be talked about. But it's about approaching that vulnerability side, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Coaching, on the other hand, because obviously there's so much we can say about counselling, but coaching is about the action plan moving forward. It's about saying, okay, well, what do you want to achieve? Where is it you want to be? What is it you want to do? It's not about mulling over, and it's not about delving into all the reasons why. It's about saying, okay, well, this is where I'm at, this is what I have, this is what I can do.
Yeah.
And making it happen, and I'd say for me, when I took when I was in a very difficult place, I took a 10-week coaching program via a friend's sister. I had to remember that then. Who is a coach herself. She's done it for a long time. She's a wonderful, wonderful energy. And she sent me over the link. She sent me over sort of weekly homeworks, and she kept me accountable by keeping up to date with me via WhatsApp. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have been able to realize the beauty and the strength and what I can achieve, and move forward with it. Because if you're always sitting in your depression, if you're always sitting in a place where it's like, oh, for goodness sake, I can't deal with this anymore, and you don't look at the positives of it, you don't really move forward. And that's what she helped me to do. And still to this day, I'm incredibly grateful, because not only have I moved forward in my life, not only have I learned all those lessons, but I've also been able to bring it forward and bring it that next level up in order to help others do the same. And that's an incredible thing. And even now, she actually asks, how do I do this? How do I do that? With, you know, some of the technological stuff that happens on the internet. And it's like, wow. So, yeah.
Well, piggybacking off what you said about therapy and coaching, I came up with my own definition, which is therapy looks to the past and tries to fix it, whereas coaching looks to the future and tries to transform it. But the thing about therapy is that you can't change the past, and I think that's one of the weaknesses of therapy. I've been in therapy for 46 years, so I'm not putting down therapy, but I am just saying that one of its weaknesses is it so focuses on the past. And I mean, Simon, you said everybody has a story, and for basically 40 years I was stuck in the same story about my schizophrenia, and in the last 5 years since I became a coach and I've been working on myself intensively and everything, everybody tells me that before you can change yourself, you have to change your story, and you have to change your perspective on how that story developed. And so I'm just doing that. But the thing about coaching being looking to the future, I think, is very right on, Claire.
Thank you.
It's very much looking forward instead of looking backwards.
It is, yeah. And it's about how you can use it as guidance as well.
Yeah.
Because say, for instance, when I was in my darkest place, I said, I never want to be here again. Never, ever, ever am I going to go to that place again. And with the coaching that I received, as well as what I've learned in my own professional, sorry if you can see things, professional remit as well, is that I've realized how to unpick those problems and be able to guide other people so that they can go towards their own fulfillment, can't they? I actually use this term, guiding fulfillment is what we do best as coaches. It's the process that you go through, but ultimately you come out feeling so fulfilled at the other side that you go, wow, someone gets me. Wow, someone's helped me to get out of this rut. And move forward in my life, and obviously it's a very sensitive point, because people do have real challenges. Of course they do, but it's about learning how to integrate those challenges rather than ignoring them and dismissing them. About saying, okay, well, I live with depression. I live with anxiety at times. My anxiety tends to crop up when I'm stressed, so I don't get stressed. I just immediately said to myself, okay, if this is taking too much of my energy or I'm worrying about it too much, move my headspace away from that and look towards something a little bit different that I can do something about. And it stops me getting built up in my anxiety.
Just one quick point, Claire. Could you move your camera up a little bit, because I can't tell through the monitor or whether actually we're seeing, but
sorry, I had to plug you in.
That's much better. So
well, I'll just
I hope you can't
picking up. Just picking up there what Claire was saying. It's something that whilst I'm in a good place nowadays and that, but I say to a lot of people that you will never ever be free of your mental demons or whatever, or part of that condition. But what you've got to do is work on a daily basis with yourself to do the very best you can to stay in a good space. I mean, at the end, the bottom line is any of us will have a down day. The secret is to make sure it's a day and it doesn't spiral. And often I look at it, when I get down, I'm usually very tired,
Yeah.
and
Same.
I've overdone it, etc. And that, and I recognise that now as a mood. When I was like you, Claire, a workaholic, and I'm pushing on. I just pushed through the tiredness. I pushed through everything else and that, and it just came out in different ways. And whilst I had a mental condition, I mean, it's done untold damage to me physically. I
Yeah.
mean, I've got a digestive system as an absolute wreck as a direct result of bottling it up. And things like that over the years because I held things in.
Yeah.
I've had some real serious issues, and I think it does become a struggle because it does impact further than just your mental well-being. It affects people around you, as I say, your physical health too. And before you know it, you've got to become a work in progress, and that's the way I look at it now. I work on myself daily, and and that's the best advice I could give to anyone. Just keep working on yourself daily, and
Yeah, definitely.
if you recognise it and you pick up the symptoms of what triggers you, or you are being triggered, then you can deal with it. I mean, for me, depression was. For me, I call it a very sneaky thing because it used to happen with me that I could be absolutely perfect one day, and then the next day, suddenly, what's going on here? And that spiral would start. Whereas now I can pick the signs up early enough to be able to realise, right, you don't need to be going here no more.
Absolutely.
And
And there's even things like taking yourself out of situations. So,
yeah,
for instance, if you're having a down day, you either rest if your body's dictating that you need rest, or you take yourself out and you go for a walk. You change your scenery to help your mentality change. If the room that you're in is a room you've been in for 2 or 3 days because you can't bring yourself to get out of it, get out of that room and make the next space something that helps reinvigorate you.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and sometimes it's as simple as that, and it's not always easy to move because, of course, with depression, you have this feeling of your body feeling like lead.
Yeah.
But it helps to take yourself out of that space in order to try and spark up that change in your head, So I do think that's a very, very good point. There was something else I was going to say. It's gone out of my head now. But ultimately, it is about accepting that, your struggles are part of who you are.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, very much so. I mean, you hit the point there about changing your environment, changing your scenery. I mean, it's very, very important. I mean, Churchill used to describe depression as the black dog. I have somebody that had similar mental health struggles to me. The best thing you can do with the black dog is take it for a walk.
I love that.
How
I love
true
that.
that is.
Yeah, very true. I love that, actually. That's very nicely put.
It was, when it was put to me like that, I thought, how succinct. What a way to describe.
It is. It really is. And
Right.
self-compassion as well. That's the most key part.
Yeah.
That was what I was going to talk to you about, if it's okay for me to go on. Thank you. Boundaries is another major thing that came up for me. I realized where I was letting my boundaries be non-existent. I realized where I was allowing my own self-respect to be quashed because of the fact that I was allowing certain people to talk to me in such a way and things like that.
Yeah.
And with boundaries, it's a very good way of saying stop. It's a very good way of saying, actually, no, I don't have the energy for that at the moment. Or actually, No, I'd rather you not talk to me like that at the moment. It's as simple as just saying no, or can I get back to you on that if it's not a good time for you? And I've certainly become a lot more conscious of that last one, because sometimes I'm on video calls all day, or sometimes I'm just not in the right headspace to be able to engage with something at the time. And I can forgive myself for that. I can forgive myself for saying I can't do that at the moment. And most people who will respect that will say, no, that's absolutely fine. We'll get back to it at another point. But if people don't respect your boundaries, that's when you have to say, okay, I'm going to distance myself from that for a little while.
Yeah.
And it's all about maintaining this up here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well,
No, I couldn't agree more.
we're coming to the end of our time, so I hopefully Adam is watching us, so he can put in the chat how to contact you, Claire. If people
Yeah,
are interested in exploring your program more. How would people go about doing that?
Well, a couple of basics, really. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me through my own name, Claire Wilding, or Phoenix Rise Life Coaching is where my Facebook journey began. It's one of the easiest ways to get in touch with me, or of course on LinkedIn, again under my name, and Phoenix Core 21 on Twitter and Instagram.
Oh, okay. Well, hopefully Adam can put that in the chat so people can see. But we have about 3 minutes left, so it is your time to shine and summarize, Claire. So, what would you like to say in closing?
Oh, no pressure. Thank you. Obviously, thank you ever so much for this opportunity. It has been certainly something that's really, it's really helped me to be able to bring all this forward from a point of now being in a healthy headspace. And what I'd like to say to other people is just keep going. Keep going, keep putting in the work, keep doing the actions every single day. And eventually you will realize that you're at a point where you're able to say, this is where I wanted to get to. And it will happen. It will happen. Give it time. And of course, if you do need any or you would like some of my coaching, please do get in touch and I'll be able to help you get to that point. Thank you.
Well, it's been a great pleasure having you, and thank you, Simon, for joining us. And I hope I didn't monopolize the conversation too much. But
no, you're a very, very good host.
I feel like I've talked quite a lot, to be fair.
Well, it was your opportunity to shine. So
thank you.
and just to put in a personal plug, I'm on at 8 o'clock UK time, 3 p.m. Eastern time on the United States on Tuesday for my show, Straight Sober. And this week I'm having a guest who was in Australia last week and he missed the time difference. So Simon was kind enough to come on and cover for him. But it's a person who's been through all sorts of things. He's a shamanic healer, and his name is Rodolfo D'Angeli. He's been a podcast host for 10 years, and recently he's joined Tony Robbins as a personal coach. So if you're interested in that, and why don't you put in a little plug for yourself, Simon? When can we look to you to be on the Workplace Warrior show?
The Workplace Warrior, I think I'll make my debut in my show next week. Certainly, we were looking at a 10 o'clock slot on UK time on Wednesday. That'll be called Man Cave Moments after the social enterprise that I've got going called Man Cave Movement. But yeah, we'll be talking all things workplace and also all things say all things men's mental health and that space too. So I'm very much looking forward to that and giving a platform to people to come in, have a chat, and I think I'd quite like to bring you on at some point, Claire.
Oh, of course, it would be an honour.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
well,
like that.
Okay.
Thank you.
we just reached an hour, but on behalf of the mental health warriors, we're always looking for new people to help and to interview. So you can contact us through YouTube at MH Warrior MH Warrior TV, and tonight at 8 o'clock UK time, we're having Carolyn Bennis, the Rainbow Warrior, back with Words of Medicine, Words with Medicine. And thank you very much, everybody, for attending. And thank you very much, Claire, for showing us your program and for being so kind with your time. And thank you, Simon, for helping me co-host. And I hope everybody has a
Yeah, thank you both. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye.
Bye.